Chapter 3. The Blue Pattern of Resonance. The dark matter jammer in the laboratory was still humming, and blue light seeped through the gaps in the metal casing, weaving a fine web on the ground. Kaelen had just placed the core fragment of the home planet beside the recorder when ripples suddenly appeared on the surface of the fragment, as if sensing something. The blue light in the texture crawled along the table towards the recorder. At the moment of contact, both made a soft sound simultaneously, as if two stardust particles were colliding in a vacuum.
What's going on?
Linny immediately stood up and placed his hand on the stardust dagger at his waist. Amu's arm was still bleeding. He wrapped it casually with a piece of cloth. When he heard the noise, he subconsciously protected the injured soldier behind him. Kaelen didn't say a word. Her fingertips gently touched the patterns of the fragments. The blue light circled around her fingertips and then retreated back into the fragments, leaving a slightly cool touch. This was not an ordinary dark matter fluctuation, but a unique resonance of the Aetheris civilization data. Her parents' recorders recorded that it only appeared when data from the same source met. Just then, the window of the laboratory suddenly lit up. Not the blue of the dark matter jammer, but the cold white characteristic of the light and shadow soldier of eternal order. Kaelen looked up and saw a translucent figure floating outside the window. The edge of its outline was still flickering slightly, like an uncalibrated projection. The number 734, the flickering number on the screen, was speaking in an emotionless electronic voice at this moment.
Eternal Order, Starnet Order. Target Kaelen. Hand over the animalic dark matter device and data carrier immediately and accept temporary data isolation. If refused, a forced clearance procedure will be initiated. Priority, Beta 1.
In the light and shadow of 734, one can see the code constantly scrolling in the background. There is also a smaller light and shadow in the distance, which is Ela. She didn't show up directly, obviously wanting 734 to test the surface first. Kaelen walked to the window and his finger streaked across the glass, leaving a watermark.
Do you know what this abnormal device is? How dare you say it's cleared?
Definition. A dark matter component that is not the Eternal Order standard and has unknown data fluctuations is determined as an anomaly.
734's response was word by word, as if it had been directly exported from an algorithm.
Instruction requirement. No need to confirm the purpose. Just destroy or bring back the starnet core.
Kaelen turned her head to glance at the stellar bud. The girl was leaning back in the chair, the lumen shard in her hand already dimmed to just a faint glow. The blue of her lips deepened a little, and her chest rose and fell faster and faster as she breathed. She clenched her fists, her knuckles pressing against the glass, and the cold white light shining on her face.
Give me 2 hours. I'll give you a reply in 2 hours, but you mustn't approach the laboratory or harm the people inside.
The 734 outside the window paused for a moment, and the flickering frequency at the edge of the light and shadow changed. Kaelen knew that she was asking Ela for instructions. A few seconds later, the electronic sound of 734 rang out again.
Permission confirmation. A 2-hour delay is allowed. If abnormal data transmission or personnel departure is detected during this period, the clearing procedure should be initiated immediately.
The light and shadow gradually faded away, and the dimness of the slum returned outside the window. When Kaelen turned around, she saw Linny staring at her, her eyes filled with confusion.
Are you really going to give them the fragments? Then what about Stellar?
Of course not.
Kaelen walked to the table, picked up the recorder, and the screen was still stuck with the image of her mother.
I'm going to take advantage of these 2 hours to make the fragments and the recorder fully resonate. The fluctuations just now have already activated the ether data in the fragments. As long as the entropy adjustment parameters are exported, an improved version of the device can be made to save Stellar.
However, there is a shortage of renewable energy.
Linny pointed at the dark matter jammer. The energy bar on the screen had dropped to 30%. The jammer needed to be set to scanning mode, and the terminal in the laboratory also needed electricity. There was only this much left in the star core mine. He fished out a small cloth bag from his pocket, inside which were the remaining star core minerals. When he spread it out, there were only 3 glimmering mineral grains. Kaelen's gaze fell on the lumen shard in the hands of Stellar Bud. The light from the fragments was almost extinguished, but Stellar Bud's fingers were still gently stroking, as if reluctant to let go. Lin Ye followed her gaze and remained silent for a long time.
How about taking apart that piece? The dark matter in lumen shard can support the terminal to run for 1 hour, which is sufficient for exporting parameters.
Kaelen turned his head sharply, his voice changing.
What will Stella do if the fragments are disassembled? Her condition can last at most half an hour. Without the suppression of fragments, the genetic defect will directly spread to the heart.
So what shall we do?
Linny's voice rose a bit, his hand pressed against the stardust dagger, his knuckles turning pale.
2 hours had passed, and Ella's people rushed in. The fragments and the recorder would be destroyed, but Stellar still wouldn't survive. Kaelen, this is not about choosing whether one is good or not, but about choosing whether one can live or not.
Amu didn't say a word. He just helped the injured soldier to the corner and then walked over to Kaelen, whispering,
The leader is right. I have seen the appearance of genetic defects, which is very painful. If disassembling the pieces can preserve the technology, at least there will be other children alive in the future.
The laboratory fell silent, with only the hum of the dark matter jammer audible. Kaelen looked at Stellar Bud. The girl had closed her eyes, her breathing getting shallower and shallower, and the fragments in her hand had completely darkened. She suddenly remembered that there was an unfinished passage in her father's recorder. That day, her father was sitting by the window of the Star Ether laboratory, holding a stardust pen in his hand, and said to the camera, Kaelen, if one day you have to make a choice, remember, technology is not about betting on who should live, but about finding ways to survive no matter what. Even if there is only a 1 in 10,000 chance, don't give up on anyone. Kaelen suddenly picked up the core fragment of her home planet and pressed her fingertip against the central pattern of the fragment. The blue light from the fragment suddenly soared and climbed up along her arm, leaving faint blue stripes on her skin. This was the energy extraction method of Etheric civilization. The parents' recorder had drawn a schematic diagram which could extract low entropy energy from the core fragments without damaging the data, while simultaneously providing energy and suppressing the disease.
What are you going to do?
Lin Ye hurriedly stepped forward, attempting to hold her back, but was dodged by Kaelen.
Derive the low entropy energy of the fragments.
Kaelen's voice trembled a little. The blue light had already reached her shoulders, and her skin felt a slight burning pain.
This energy could not only power the terminal, but also be used as temporary fragments on the Stellar.
She just paused for a moment, looking at the blue stripes on her arm.
Energy will flow through my body, which might damage the nerves, but at least it can last until the parameters are derived.
Linny's hand froze in midair. Amu opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he only said,
I'll keep an eye on 734 for you. If there's any movement, I'll call you.
Kaelen nodded, walked up to Stellar Bud, squatted down, and gently placed his bluish hand on her chest. The blue light seeped through Stellar Bud's clothes. The girl's breathing gradually became more steady, and the blue color of her lips also lightened a little. She walked up to the terminal again, placed her other hand on the recorder. The fragmented blue light followed her body and split into two streams, one flowing towards the Stellar Bud and the other towards the terminal, weaving a complete blue net in the laboratory. The terminal screen suddenly lit up. Not the previous snowflakes, it is the interface of Ethera civilization. On the black background, countless blue lines emerge. On the left is the consciousness data architecture of Eternal Order StarNet, and on the right is the physical genetic map of stellar descendants. The middle is connected by an undulating curve, marked with the entropy adjustment curve, 0.7 to 1.2. This is the core of the twin symbiosis technology. What parents failed to complete is now fully presented before our eyes.
It's done.
Amu couldn't help but let out a low shout and quickly covered his mouth, fearing that 734 outside the window would hear him. Kaelen was sweating on her forehead, and the burning pain in her arm was getting stronger and stronger, but she didn't dare to stop. The terminal was automatically exporting parameters, and the progress bar had reached 40%. It would be completed in another half an hour. Looking at the curves on the screen, she suddenly recalled what her mother had said. There would never be a choice between immortality or death again. Her eyes immediately warmed up. Just then, in the corner of the laboratory, the light and shadow of room 734 lit up again. It wasn't the previous probing. This time, her light and shadow carried a red warning pattern, which was Ila's command. The electronic sound of 734 was a bit faster than before, as if struggling.
Kaelen, the Ella administrator, detected abnormal data resonance and upgraded the command. Stop the operation immediately, otherwise.
Her words suddenly froze. Kaelen looked up and saw the edge of 734's light and shadow start to flicker irregularly. A hint of blue mixed into the code in the background, which was the resonance data of Mother Star Shard, drifting into her light and shadow through the gap of the window. The electronic tone of 734 suddenly changed pitch. It was no longer the cold algorithmic sound, but carried a slightly imperceptible tremble, even interspersed with fragmented humming.
Emotional data fragments detected. Content, hum the melody. Should it be reported?
Kaelen's heart gave a sudden jolt. That's Mother's voice. When she was working overtime at the Stellar Descendants laboratory back then, she always liked to hum this lullaby. Her father said that she learned it from her grandmother, Stellar Descendants, and it was a song that could calm down all the stardust. I never expected that after such a long time, it would be hidden in the fragmented resonance data and even captured by 734. She looked at the light and shadow of 734 and saw that in her code stream, a small cache file was being generated. The file name was garbled, but the icon was a flickering stardust shape. A few seconds later, the light and shadow of 734 returned to normal, but there was a bit more hesitation in the electronic sound.
Ayla Administrator's instruction.
Delay for 15 minutes. During this period, laboratory data must be continuously uploaded. Kaelen, hurry up.
As she said this, another half of her humming drifted out from the edge of her shadow. It was as fast as an illusion, yet it was clearly heard by Kaelen. The light and shadow vanished again. Kaelen looked out of the window and suddenly realized that old Kui was right. In the light and shadow of eternal order, there were also people who wanted to see stardust. Those emotions suppressed by algorithms and those memories deleted are actually hidden in the crevices of consciousness, waiting for a melody that can awaken them.
The parameters have been exported to 60%.
Linny's voice interrupted her train of thought. On the terminal screen, the progress bar was still slowly climbing. Stellar Bud's breathing was getting more and more steady. Although the lumen shard in her hand was not lit up, her fingertips began to move gently, and she was murmuring something in a low voice, as if she was beating the rhythm to some inaudible melody. Just then, a red window suddenly popped up on the laboratory screen. It wasn't Ila's instruction, but code with higher privileges, marked with Orville's exclusive silver-gray logo.
Urgent order from the executive. Data resonance of Aetheris civilization. Twin symbiosis technology has been detected. Immediately terminate the Ella administrator's authority, take over the 734 execution unit, and initiate the laboratory dark matter detonation program. Objective: completely destroy all data carriers, including the target Kaelen. Priority: highest Omega.
The number 734 in the lower right corner of the screen suddenly turned red. Kaelen's heart sank. Just as she was about to disconnect the energy connection, Ila's voice came from outside the window. This time, it wasn't an electronic voice, but a somewhat flustered human voice, even carrying the characteristic ending sound of the Stellar Descendants language.
734. Don't execute the instructions. That was Orville's compulsory authority. He wanted to destroy all the evidence. That's how he deleted my mother back then.
But it's already too late. The light and shadow of 734 suddenly appeared in the center of the laboratory. It was no longer semi-transparent, but condensed into a solid, cold white light with a data ray emitter in her hand. It was Orville who remotely controlled her. There is no emotion in her electronic voice, only the coldness of code.
Execute the console's order. Data fuse ray preparation. Target: recorder and core debris of the home planet. Countdown: 10 seconds.
Kaelen, get out of the way quickly.
Linny pounced over to pull her, but was blocked by the light and shadow of 734. Amu picked up the stardust ore on the ground and threw it at 734, but it was directly penetrated by the light and shadow. The light and shadow of eternal order are not afraid of physical attacks. The ray emitter began to charge, and the cold white light grew brighter and brighter. Kaelen looked at the 80% progress bar on the terminal, then at the stellar bud. The girl had already opened her eyes and was looking at her, tightly grasping the dimming lumen shard in her hand, and hummed half a sentence clearly.
It's Ballad of the Mother Star.
Kaelen suddenly realized that Stellar had heard the melody left by its mother in the data within the low entropy energy of the fragments.
9 seconds, 8 seconds.
Kaelen suddenly made a choice. She suddenly cut off the energy flowing to the terminal and directed it all to Stellar Bud. A blue light shone on the girl's chest. The blue color on her lips completely faded, and her humming voice became clearer. Then she threw herself onto the table, held the recorder and the core fragments of her home planet in her arms, and turned to stand in front of Stellar Bud.
7 seconds, 6 seconds.
The ray emitter of 734 was aimed at her. Kaelen closed her eyes and waited for that cold white light, but a few seconds later, the expected pain didn't come. She opened her eyes and saw Ila's light and shadow suddenly rush in, blocking her way and using her own light and shadow to block the rays. The cold white light shone on Ayla's shadow, and her outline instantly became transparent. The electronic voice carried a painful electric current sound, yet she stubbornly hummed a song. It's the melody of Ballad of the Mother Star. Ayla's voice was choked up. The code at the edge of the light and shadow began to disintegrate, but she still persisted. Kaelen took the fragments and the recorder away. At the end of the secret passage was the stardust shield of stellar descendants.
Mom, I finally remembered your song.
3 seconds, 2 seconds.
The rays of 734 are still ongoing. The light and shadow of Ayla are getting fainter and fainter, almost scattering into light grains. Just then, the door of the laboratory was suddenly knocked open. Old Kui rushed in, holding a jammer modified from starnet fragments. The moment he pressed the button, the light and shadow of 734 suddenly flickered, and the rays deflected and hit the wall, leaving a black hole emitting blue smoke. In the light and shadow of 734, the melody of Ballad of the Mother Star is getting more and more powerful.
"Hurry up!"
Old Kui shouted.
"Orville's fleet is coming soon. No one will survive if we don't leave."
Kaelen held the fragments and the recorder, pulling up Stellar Bud. Lin Ye supported the injured soldier, with Amu following behind. Ayla's shadow had faded so much that it was almost invisible. She looked at Kaelen and finally snorted.
One day, the way home will be clear.
Then it completely dissipated into the air. The transmitter of 734 also stopped. Her number returned to white, and Ballad of the Mother Star was still playing in a loop in the light and shadow, as if seeing them off. Kaelen looked back at the laboratory. The progress bar of the terminal had stopped at 90%. The black hole on the wall was still emitting blue smoke. The blue light of the core fragments of the Mother Star was reflected on the ground, and together with the melody of Ballad of the Mother Star, it woved into a gentle barrier. She gritted her teeth and followed Old Kui into the secret passage. Behind her came the explosion from the laboratory. The blue light from the dark matter disruptor instantly swallowed the entire room, but it didn't cover the looping song. The blue stripes in the secret passage were still shining, left by the resonance of Mother Star Shard. Stellar Bud held Kaelen's hand tightly and continued humming Ballad of the Mother Star. Kaelen looked at the fragments in her arms. It seemed that the melody was also dancing in the blue light, as if the voices of Mother, Ayla, and 734 were all hidden inside, telling her, "Don't be afraid. The way home will eventually show up."
Will they come back?
Stellar Bud raised his head and asked. Kaelen looked ahead at the increasingly bright glimmer of light. It was the stardust shield of stellar descendants, a new hope. She held the fragments tightly, feeling the melody and warmth dancing inside, and nodded slightly.
Sure. When we find the twin symbiosis technology and when we help those who want to go home find their way, they will definitely come back.
In the light at the end of the secret passage, it seemed that the echoes of Ballad of the Mother Star could also be heard. Kaelen knew that this was just the beginning, but as long as this song remained, and as long as there were still people who remembered the appearance of their home planet, the balance between sustainability and humanity would surely be found.